What is up, guys? Adrian here from Lost TV, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be discussing a dream event, but not like the one that you saw last week. Last week was something that I want to make basically conjured up from nothing. And if you guys haven't checked that video out, go ahead and do so. It is where I give you a Willy Wonka-based haunted house, a house based on Poseidon's Fury, and so much more. But for this video in particular, I'm going to give you a what-if situation of what if this event and this event came together and gave you a massive event. Two events together that I have experienced to create a perfect event from the past. So, with that being said, I'm going to give you houses from HHN 28 and HHN 25 together to give you a mashup event that I believe would be perfect. Now, these two events together would create an event with Jack being an icon over the event, watching over as there is an 80s theme looming across the entire park. So Jack with an 80s theme, bringing all the carnage. Just imagine it. Synthwave, Jack the Clown, perfect combination. But, of course, we can't have a Horror Nights event without the haunted houses, so we're going to start off with the first one here, and it is nonetheless my favorite Horror Nights house of all time. Jack Presents 25 Years of Monsters and Mayhem. Now, this house was honestly, and will honestly, forever be one of my all-time favorite houses. It's perfect. The facade is gorgeous. You walk up and you see a marquee for all the different icons, and then you see Jack's face, straight in center. You walk straight in and you walk through Horror Nights history. And I'm telling you, you're walking through so many different properties that are original. You walk through Scary Tales, you walk through The Forsaken, you walk through HR Blood and Guts. You see so much here, and it was a perfect blend of everything together to give you a perfect anniversary house, and honestly, a perfect house altogether. But bouncing off from Jack Presents, we're going to go to location B, which honestly is one of the best houses from HHN 28, and that is Stranger Things, which is located in the Music Plaza stage. And if you didn't know, Jack was located right next to Despicable Me and the studio store, so right there in that little hub. Nonetheless, we bounce back to Stranger Things. This house was a perfect depiction of the intellectual property. And if you did not watch my video on a house commentary for this that I put out earlier this week, go ahead and check that out. I'll put it right there in the eye. It's one of these two corners. I don't know which one. But go ahead and check that out as I gave you a house commentary on this. I feel like I'm obligated to tell you this. Stranger Things should have been a year-round haunted house. I know year-round haunts don't get the love, but this house, Stranger Things 1, gave us that positivity and the feel of a year-round haunted house. And truly, it should have happened. But nonetheless, I'm excited to see what happens with Stranger Things 4 this year and to see what it grows into, to see if we get anything else in the near future. And now bouncing from location B to location C, we are now going to Race Through New York starring Jimmy Fallon. That's not the haunted house, even though it is a little scary. We're going into Scary Tales, Deadly Ever After, which funny enough, I have a poster for right here. It is one of my favorite Horror Nights houses for multiple reasons. One of them being this was me and Lexi's very first ever haunted house that we experienced at Halloween Horror Nights together. Now that's not why it made the list. It could have made it on that solo reason alone, but the fact that this was my first time experiencing Scary Tales, and I got to see so many different creatures. Follow me along here. The house was basically the Wizard of Oz. Started off as that at least. Then you got into Goldilocks and a bunch of other things, and Rapunzel. It was cool altogether, and all these different sets were really nice to see, and truly it will always have a special place in my heart. That is why Scary Tales is here at C. Now we're going to move over to D, which is on the left side of the New York Library area. It is going to be Body Collector's Recollections. This house was one of the first haunted houses I ever experienced that were quiet. And when I tell you quiet, I mean it was peaceful, and all you could hear were the screams of people, and that was terrifying. The facade itself is what really blew me away here. Honestly, you walked up to a Shady Brook Asylum that was abandoned. Nothing but snow and lightning. It was a perfect entryway into this house, as all you heard was a gentle piano. And altogether, seeing the body collectors attack people, take their bones, and create so many house appliances with them was very unique, and it made me wish to see them again soon. Hopefully we see them at the next anniversary, or sooner than that. I don't know, but altogether, that is location D, and now we move to location E, which is our 5th and final soundstage house, and this is going to be Poltergeist. Poltergeist was honestly one of the scariest intellectual property houses that I have ever experienced. It was so good that Lexi fell in love with this house. I'm telling you, it was a great haunted house. The facade was mind-blowing. I know I'm saying this about a lot of these houses, but there's a reason that I picked these to be my mashup event, because it's just makes sense. It's right there in front of you. But the facade was the backyard of the house with the pool sunken in, and you were walking in, and then you hear the man in the background, "You son of a bitch, you moved the headstones and left the bodies. Why? Why?" Now that's just paraphrasing. I'm not sure if that's exactly what was said, but that's more or less what was said. But this house was creepy from start to finish. You walk straight into a graveyard that was under the house as well, and these demons were coming to get you left and right. They were everywhere, and they were terrifying. And then you actually got to experience the house itself from Poltergeist, seeing the different hauntings and everything, and then you walked into something that we didn't experience in the movie, which was the White Void, in which there were different spirits, and this is where it really got you excited for it. Altogether, this was a perfect house, and that clown traumatized me because it was a puppet that just moved its head. It was scary. Really scary. And now we move to our first sprung tent house, and it is going to be Slaughter Cinema. You knew I had to pick this. Again, going back to the facade thing, this has one of the best original facades, and the house itself was something that reminded me of Jack Presents 25 Years of Monster and Mayhem, with everything being brand new instead of it being a callback to the past. Slaughter Cinema, if you didn't know, is a bunch of individual original based houses that didn't make the cut. So essentially, you are going into these houses that are now movies, but they're just little snippets of them. And just imagine walking through this and thinking to yourself, this could have been a full-on house based on this one thing, but instead we have multiple things in one house that are showing you something similar. Now, this concept is amazing, and I wish they would bring something back to this extent, and they probably will. They did it with Case Files, and honestly, that house was great as well. So, we'll find out very soon when we see something like this again. And then we will move from Slaughter Cinema to the next sprung tent house, which is Insidious. And I know what you're thinking already if you've experienced these two events. These two are in the same location. However, for my mashup event, I'm just going to put them in two different sprung tents because, yeah, it's my event. It's what I want to do. But anyways, Insidious was honestly so good. I talked about it a lot in my IP rankings, and honestly, it's perfect. It was a perfect depiction of the IP. Similar to Stranger Things, it was just perfect. Down to every single detail. You got to see the lipstick-faced demon enter his lair, and you got to see the bride in black. Altogether, this house gave me the heebie-jeebies, scared the poop out of me, and honestly, it was just a perfect blend of everything all together. So, Insidious, you're great. Never forget that. Now we're going to move away from the sprung tents and go into the parade buildings, and the first one we're going to go into is Seeds of Extinction, located in the newer of the two parade buildings. Now this house, when I tell you, scared me so bad, it was just perfect. Honestly, it was a house where the scare actors were hidden in plain sight, but they were still scaring you no matter what was going on. And I mean, literally, I have a story. So I used to have a cord on the back of my glasses, and it was to hold my glasses so they didn't fall off. The reason that I got that cord is because of Seeds of Extinction. So I was going through, and Lexi used to like to hold both of my hands. This was the first year she attended the event, so she was kind of scared and timid towards everything. But she was holding my hands, and I got caught on one of the vines. So I was like, oh no, so I flung it off. And when I flung it, my glasses went flying. And I could not find them. And the scare actor proceeded to scare me aggressively. So, yeah, left a permanent mark on me. And honestly, it's made it one of my all-time favorite original houses located in the parade buildings. So, thank you, scare actor, for traumatizing me and making me get new glasses altogether in one sweep. So, shout out to you. And in the other parade building, we have my all-time favorite Halloween movie. And I don't know if you guys can see it well, but he's up there too. Sam, we have Trick or Treat. And now this is more of a sentimental reason, and the fact that I love the movie. The house was really good, and honestly, the full to scale sets, the smells of chocolate, and just seeing the characters from the movie that I love is really the reason that I picked this. So, Trick or Treat, welcome. And now our 10th and final haunted house is Asylum in Wonderland 3D, located in the Shrek building, or you can kind of call it the VillainCon building now, but we're going to call it the Shrek building because that's where it was located. This is honestly one of the last great 3D houses that I experienced. So it's the story of Alice in Wonderland, but dark and twisted. So you're seeing everything in this horror aspect, but you have 3D glasses on, so everything's popping out at you. And the world of Alice in Wonderland is already colorful and bright. So seeing this all with a 3D effect was really cool to see. And honestly, this house could not be left off the list if I was talking about anything in general. So, Asylum in Wonderland caps off my haunted houses for this event. But now, let's go into the streets, because the streets were also very iconic for these 2 years. So we're going to start out in the front, and that is Production Central, or Minion Boulevard, whatever you want to call it. We have Scary Tales Scream Punk. Now this scare zone was honestly my first introduction to Scary Tales at all. So I mentioned that Scary Tales Deadly Ever After was the first time I ever saw it in a house. This is my first time experiencing it all together. And honestly, it was really cool to see the different characters meshed in and blended with a steampunk look. So it was all the different horror characters that were from Scary Tales, but more edgy and more like steampunky. So they had a lot of gears, they had a lot of like metal, and it was really nice to see. And I really liked the giant set piece they had in the middle that was a giant like steam engine that was essentially one giant gear, now that I think back on it. But it was a really cool zone, so thumbs up. Now we're going to move from Production Central all the way to New York. And in New York we have Vamp 85 New Year's Eve. Now, if you say you went to HHN 28 and you tell me you did not like this scare zone, I'm telling you right now, I feel like you're a liar. This scare zone was so cool. You had the different characters from the 80s, and everything was so cool. And honestly, one of my good friends was in this scare zone, so it might be the reason that I'm pivotal and love it so much. But this is where we ended up seeing our characters that we probably fell in love with for a very long time. Vamp was perfect. It's everything you wanted to see in a scare zone. And honestly, it has me excited to see Vamp 69, knowing that we're taking that same like concept in a different era. So instead of the 80s, we're now going to the 60s. So that's a 1-2 punch that I cannot wait to see. But altogether, Vamp 85 was a perfect blend of horror and memories put together. And now we're going to move from New York and go to San Francisco, in which we have probably one of my all-time favorite scare zones, and that is Night Diane Double Feature. Now, if you're wondering why that name sounds so like different if you didn't attend HHN 25, is because this scare zone featured 2 completely different casts. What do I mean by that? There was a cast that was in black and white, and then there was a cast that was in color. So essentially, if you went out at certain times, you'd see Frankenstein, Wolfman, Invisible Man, the Bride of Frankenstein, and so many different characters. And if you went out a little bit later, for the next set, you would see Freddy, Jason, Purgers, Chucky, Tiffany. So many different options to see. And I wish they would do this with scare zones more often, in which both casts were completely different. So you could see different things and experience a different thing every single time that you go through. So I feel like this scare zone was way ahead of its time, and it's honestly going to stay that way for a while unless Horror Nights decides to do something a little different, but we'll see. Who knows? Now we're going to go from San Francisco to Central Park, and we have Twisted Traditions. Now, this to me is more of a let's get a feel-good scare zone here, and let's bring out the big pumpkin guy on stilts and bring the pumpkins into the trees of Central Park too. So this scare zone altogether, to me, felt like it was something that was a head nod to Trick or Treat, but with an original story, and something that was leading to something in the near future. This was my thought, thinking of, oh, maybe we're going to see the Pumpkin Lord actually become something, and he kind of did, but this really wasn't the origin story to it, but it kind of thought that it was then. But nonetheless, this scare zone I feel like was very nice for the area of Central Park because the pumpkins on the trees always light up a beautiful path for us. And now our fifth and final scare zone is going back down to Hollywood, and we are talking about Revenge of Chucky. This scare zone right here made me fall in love with Chucky as a character. I did not care for Chucky, if I'm being 100% honest with you. I always thought Chucky was just a doll. This scare zone gave Chucky a live mic and allowed him to talk to people right there in the streets. Now, it wasn't anything too vulgar, too crazy, but it was Chucky being Chucky. And honestly, altogether, it was perfect to see because it tied in with the entire zone. You didn't have Chucky running around the scare zone, you just had Chucky putting a little bit of his soul into every single character in that street, meaning that everyone there was a different part of Chucky. So there were some that were crazy, there were some that were funny, there were some that were calm, there were some that were timid, but altogether, this scare zone gave you a perfect blend of Chucky, and it was great to see. I really love this concept, and it made me fall in love with Chucky again, so thumbs up. And now we move away from the scare zones and go to our shows. And this is where it gets a little simple. Right there, next to Twisted Tradition, we had a giant stage, and that is going to be where we are going to bring the stage back for, and it is going to be the Carnage Returns. Of course, you can't have a full-on event about Jack the Clown without his own show. So the Carnage Returns was a perfect way to bring Jack back to this audience, and it made everyone so excited. The set design was great. It gave us looks into the past of Horror Nights as well. So doing that again would just be chef's kiss. And of course, mashing up these two events, I had to give you guys one of my all-time favorite Halloween Horror Night shows, and that is Bill and Ted's Excellent Halloween Adventure. If you were never lucky enough to experience a Bill and Ted show, I'm sorry, but I will tell you this. They are the funniest things you'll ever experience, sometimes the weirdest things you'll ever experience, and altogether just so many memories. So, with all that being said, that is my mashup between these two Horror Nights events. So, I want to know what two events you would mash together, and what would the houses be? What would your scare zones be? And what would your shows be? Will there be an icon? Will there not be an icon? Let me know down below. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you guys already haven't done so, and stay excellent, my dudes.